Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Trekking into History on this day, this beautiful, gorgeous April 18th, 2024. We're gonna take a step back into time, as it were. We're gonna start off with the births today, do a little something different. Mostly because the very first item on the list goes all the way back to 1590, where Ahmed I, he was an Ottoman sultan. He would be born on this day. Also notable births were 1944, Robert Hansen. He was an American law enforcement agency and spy. That's all I really know about him. Also on this day in 1963, nighttime talk show host Conan O'Brien would be born, so today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Conan. So we started off with the birthdays there, and we're going to go back to on this day in 1775. It's Revolutionary War time. There was actually two guys that did this midnight run, but Paul Revere is the one who gets the most notable fame for it. I don't know why. There were two guys. Paul Revere had rode from Lexington to Concord, I think, and then on to Boston, and then the other guy had rode the opposite direction, right? And the big thing was, what Paul Revere is known for is that he's riding in the middle of the night, shouting at the top of his lungs, lantern in one hand, horse reins in the other, and you get this big epic imagery of this guy on horseback riding in the middle of the night, shouting at the top of his lungs, "To arms, to arms, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming, to arms, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming." So he was, this is before telephones, this is before telegraphs, this is before, any kind of advanced, no radios, no nothing, but any kind of advanced technology that could massively, rile the citizens into, basically calling the militiamen to arms. So he had to ride all through the night, and he shouted to, at the top of his lungs, and he woke up all the residents in his path, and they formed a militia. And it would be soon after that the infamous shot heard around the world, the first shot heard around the world. It's unclear which side actually opened fired first. I'm sure that we claim that the British had fired first, and they're going to claim that the colonists fired first, but it was the shot that was heard around the world, and that's what sparked off the Revolutionary War, which would end up in our favor, obviously, because our nation was born out of it. And it kind of began a bit of a domino effect for the British losing control of their territories over the next 200 years, really. So on this day, 1775, Paul Revere and his compadre, and I can't remember the guy's name either, so I'm equally guilty of that, but they did the midnight run, calling all to arms to repel the British invasion. And the reason why the British were coming is because they were coming to seize everyone's guns. They had heard that there was a stockpile of weapons that the citizens had, and they'd heard about it, and so they were going to go and take them. So, that was a little bit on the Revolutionary War. So, on this day in 1906, the Great Fire of 1906 in San Francisco would start as a result of this massive earthquake that they had. And The reason why it was so devastating is because it kind of built up the seascape, I guess. It was soft ground to begin with. As they built up the town, they built it up out of the shoreline, I suppose. And because the San Andreas Fault runs underneath San Francisco, they had built up all that that area, and they started putting buildings and such. And so in 1906 there was a pretty devastating earthquake, and that earthquake led to mass fires, and those fires consumed a big chunk of the city. I think it burned like a third of the city down as a result of that. So that's what happened in 1906. On this day in I already talked about 1944, Robert Hansen being born. So on this day in 1942, if you're a World War II buff, or you're of an older generation that would have heard of Ernie Pyle. Ernie Pyle was an embedded journalist, right? We see embedded journalists now a lot in our day and age. Reporters will go in with the troops, to be where the action is so they can report firsthand what's going on. Well, Ernie Pyle was a very well-known, respected journalist of his time period. And he was embedded with U.S. Marines in the Pacific Theater of World War II. And it's on this day that he was actually killed by, while the Marines were engaged in battle with the Japanese. It was actually a Japanese fire that had killed him on this day. On this day in 1955, I would imagine that everyone has heard of Albert Einstein. I mean, he was a great scientist. He was a great innovative thinker of his time. The theory of E equals MC squared, that was what he had developed. Really smart guy. Smartest mathematician of his time, but yet he couldn't do basic arithmetic. He couldn't do the 2 + 2 = 4, the 4 + 4 = 8, that kind of thing. He could not do simple arithmetic, but he could do these huge, massive, mathematical equations that are just, mind-blowing to me and you, possibly. But he read the higher math. He read it as a secondary language, and he understood it, but he couldn't do basic math. At any rate, on this day in 1955, Albert Einstein would pass away at the age of 76. On this day in 1980, the African country of Zimbabwe, and I didn't know that they were actually a United Kingdom territory, but in 1980, 1980, they gained their independence from the United Kingdom, which is interesting because yesterday was the day that, in 1982, that Canada gained its independence. So, remember how I was talking about that cascading domino effect that would, go over the course of 200 years? Well, there you go. The United Kingdom lost another territory on this day in 1980, just as they did, in 1982, yesterday. So, Zimbabwe gets its independence. That was in 1980. 1999, if you're a hockey fan, Wayne Gretzky is a household name, I'm sure, if you're a hockey fan. Well, Wayne Gretzky, who is arguably attributed as being the greatest of all time, he's the hockey GOAT. On this day in 1999, he would play his very last hockey game before he retired. And then, I skipped one. I knew I missed one. So on this day in 1942, we're going to go back to World War II. on this day in 1942, if you've ever heard of the Doolittle Raid or Doolittle's Raiders, what that is that, as you know, in December 7th, 1941, we were attacked by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. It was very devastating, and that's what had brought us into World War II. Well, our retaliation for that Japanese attack was that we had launched 16 B-25 bombers off of an aircraft carrier. They flew straight to Tokyo, and notably they attached some friendship medals that the Japanese government had given to the United States years earlier. They attached them to one of our bombs, and so those 16 bombers, they took off. They were led by a Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, and he flew this mission with them. They flew this mission. They flew to Japan. They went to Tokyo, and they bombed the crap out of Tokyo. And it was our first retaliatory strike since the incident in Pearl Harbor. Right? We bloodied their nose a little bit. The war would go on for, another almost 3.5 years there. No, well, not quite 3.5 years. It would go on until, that was 42. So yeah, because the war ended in 45. So yeah, it would go for another 3+ years there. But yeah, I forgot that James Doolittle's Raiders. There was a movie kind of loosely based on that. It was kind of it wasn't really an exact thing, but it was heavily inspired by Ben Affleck, Alec Baldwin, Josh Hartnett were in that movie, and now the name of the movie is escaping me. But it was regarding that raid, and so yeah. I think I've got everything here. Oh yeah, so it was this day on 1945. I don't know if I mentioned that when Ernie Pyle was killed. It was like very, very end of the war. That was 1945 that Ernie Pyle was killed. That would have been 3 years to the day after Doolittle's raid that Ernie Pyle was killed. And the last on this list is, and it's kind of a Debbie Downer, but it's so if you grew up in my time period, you grew up in my era, you would have watched, or you would have seen this show called American Bandstand, right? And it was hosted by Dick Clark. And this guy had hosted this program for decades, right? He was an American icon. He would later go do the dropping of the ball in New York, for New Year's Eve. That was something that he would do, and so for me, it was a little strange seeing someone else do the ball dropping in 2013, because on this day in 2012, this is the day that Dick Clark passed away. He had a stroke about a year or so before his passing, if I remember right, and he never quite recovered. I think he did try. I think they did have him on as kind of like a guest in 2012 when the ball dropped from 2011 to 2012. I think that he was there. I can't remember, but it was on this day in 2012 that Dick Clark passed away. It was about as sad of a moment for me as when the radio personality Casey Kasem had passed away. But we'll get to that when that time comes. So this has been your trek into history. This has been your walkthrough on this day of April 18th. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you are all able to enjoy this beautiful day. If it is, well, if you're here in this area, it's a beautiful day. But at any rate, no matter where you are or what you're doing, have a blessed day, and we'll do this again tomorrow. I'll give you a little teaser. Tomorrow is the anniversary of a major tragic event and a birthday of an actor. So I'm going to tease you a little bit with that one. Until then, I'm signing off, and we will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have a good one. All right, bye.